generation of gaming, this console generation specifically, the word next gen has been getting thrown around like, oh, this is not next gen, that's not next gen enough, and nobody really knows the fuck they're talking about next gen. When Microsoft started the generation of the series consoles, they said that the first 2 years they're doing cross gen everything because the they need time to learn what next gen means. And then on the Sony side, they was like, we're going next gen from the start. But then everything's cross gen, and their fans were all like, wait, I thought you said you believe in generations. We all remember that all happened, and then slowly all their next gen games are going to PlayStation 4, and now everything's changing for the Sony side, and then Returnal came out, and everybody like true next gen, but then that bitch was running at 1080p, and they needed something to hit, and Insomniac gave them hope. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was the first true next gen game, and oh man, was Sony fans happy about that? Their little 4-hour experience with Ratchet and Clank Rifts Apart, jumping through rifts and all that. They were like, we got a true next gen game. Xbox don't have any. And it's like, yeah, we knew that from the start. Yeah, I didn't. So we're not too worried about that. But the Sony fans were so happy about Ratchet and Clank. But after Ratchet and Clank came out, there's been a whole lot of controversy about, is this game truly really next gen? From what Insomniac was saying, it is. But then articles and developers have all been saying like, these things could be done because it was a video that came out a while back that the Rift thing that they were doing was created in Unreal Engine 3. So the Rift technology isn't new. That was an Unreal Engine 3 demo thing that they brought up. Like, this Rift thing was already done. It's copy and paste into Insomniac's Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It's exactly the same tech. Exactly the same tech. It was crazy how similar it was. But now there's videos all on YouTube. There's articles all on the internet. Twitter was blowing up about it. There's a developer that came out and said, like, Ratchet and Clank could have been done on PlayStation 3. I don't know why Insomniac is lying about this being PlayStation 5 only could do this. And I was already like, I know it can run on PlayStation 4. All of those next-gen games can run on PlayStation 4. They probably are easier to run on only PlayStation 5. That's why they did it. And Sony was already like, we need to take these games to sell consoles. That's what they did. They took these games that could be on PlayStation 4 to sell fucking consoles. And it worked. But now developers are like, bro, this tech ain't new. And that shit can run on PlayStation 3. And I was seeing all the fanboys fighting over it. And all these articles, I read like 2 or 3 articles. They all talking about what this developer said. But what nobody's talking about is this developer made a YouTube video. Like, he ain't just say this shit in no interview. Like, he made a whole YouTube video about it. And I'm like, I just want to see his video. Like, I just want to see what he really said. Because the articles, they paraphrase everything. They probably cut things out, trying to make it seem like, trying to paint him as like an enemy of Sony or some shit like that. Like, this man made Lego games. Like, the shit they did in Lego games were fucking crazy. Like, Lego games did a whole lot of good shit, and people don't give them credit for it. But I just wanted to see what he got to say. So we're going to react to the video right here. And see what he's really saying. Because the articles have definitely been lacking on some things. So make sure that like button, subscribe. And we're going to see if Ratchet and Clank really could be done on a PlayStation 3.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game that utilizes dimensions and dimensional rifts. And that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation 5.
And that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation.
He's like, this is not
5.
true. And yeah, because they already showed the Unreal Engine 3 Rift thing, and it was exactly like Ratchet and Clank. So we know it doesn't need a solid-state drive to do that.
Episode of Coding Secrets. In this episode, I'm looking into Insomniac's claims that Ratchet and Clank's Rift Apart gameplay wouldn't be possible without a PS5. Having platinumed the final game, I can state that the way the Rift gameplay was represented before launch was pretty misleading. There were amazing sequences of Ratchet zipping between many other worlds, all chained together into awesome action sequences. Turns out in the final game, these are mostly just cutscenes or very short sections of very limited gameplay. Anyhow, in this video I'll explain how this can easily be achieved on previous generations of hardware. The first instance of Rift gameplay I want to look at is pocket dimensions. Most levels have these rifts that lead to a bonus non-essential area. Now they could be using all kinds of solid state drive trickery to pull these off, but because it's just one rift and it always goes to the same area, this can easily be achieved on older hardware. I don't want to go into a whole breakdown of various level streaming techniques, as I don't think you need to understand them to understand how this can be achieved, but let's just take the example of Ratchet's spaceship or the shop where you buy your weapons. Obviously these things take memory and are probably loaded in as you approach them. They will have a very low memory version of the visuals for, say, the ship, so you can see it in the distance, and as you get nearer the game will load in the high detail model. This is very standard on games. So when you aren't near the ship, the memory that would be used for the ship or the shop is free to be used by other things. So as you approach the pocket dimension rift, that section will be loaded into the memory area that the ship or the shop used to be. This is just an example and may not be accurate for this particular game, but you get the concept. Let's say you're loading between the ship and the rift area, you only have to start loading each section when you're halfway between them, so you have plenty of time to load. Now obviously it would be pretty hard to fit an entire level into the same amount of memory as the ship or the shop would fit into, but you can see that the pocket dimensions are really graphically basic, and in fact just seem to use a lot of the same generic objects like crates that would already be available in generic memory. So it's pretty much a sky dome, a few small platforms, generic objects and nice lighting. So on older hardware it wouldn't take much memory, especially as it also uses the generic objects, all of which would make it quick to load. And you can't even see through the rifts until you're very close to them, giving you even more time to load. Okay.
Alright, so just from him starting off right there, he's saying like the tricks that they used in the past would work exactly the same as these rift things do because they're pathways that they made. So one thing that I remembered when he was talking about the loading sequence thing is everybody's favorite PlayStation 4 game of all time, God of War. The remake of God of War, or the next installment of the God of War franchise, when he went to the, what the hell was the middle thing called, where he changes to go to dimension, the bridge. When he hit that thing and the bridge does a little turnaround thing, the whole sequence so he can leave and then go to the next bridge was all the loading sequence. So it was no real loading screens in God of War. So, and then like the Tree of Life, I think it was the Tree of Life, where he opens the Tree of Life door and you use that to fast travel, and then you walk around the fucking tree until it loads the next area so you can walk out of the door. Like those were like the loading sequences, so you never saw the loading, and there was like intricate parts of that. And he's saying in this video that yeah, the rifts are using memory, but you could easily just have them bitches loading in the background. Like the rifts don't open until you get close enough to them, so the whole time you're walking to it, it's loading what's behind the rift. So it's not using solid state memory to load everything real fast in real time, because you can see that it's loading, because when you get there it's done loading. And I'm like, oh, okay, so these techniques could be done on older hardware because of all the loading. And he said like all the generic assets that was around in these like areas where like they got the same block and like some lighting, like that is all used so they can load the next sequence of high texture objects and you don't even notice. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how gaming works. So this probably could have been done on PlayStation 4 easily, but they held it to PlayStation 5.
So the pocket dimensions are relatively easy. So what about the show-stopping sections when you jump from rift to rift in quick succession? Surely that would need the PS5's solid-state drive, right? Well, no. Let's have a look at this sequence that Insomniac say wouldn't be possible without the PS5.
This is what we're trying to do, is build worlds that feel real and are bringing you in. You're exploring these brand new spaces. And this is something that we never could have done on previous generations. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game that utilizes dimensions and dimensional rifts, and that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation 5. The SSD is screamingly fast. It allows us to build worlds and project players from one place to another in near instantaneous speeds. It is unbelievable game changer in terms of we can now do gameplay where you're in one world and the next moment you're in another. And we're loading up levels that happen so quickly and in the action that you don't even imagine that this is something that we couldn't do before because it feels so natural. Long gone are loading screens. Now it's all about bringing exciting new adventures.
Right, let's break this down. We start on a speedle blasting across a level and go through a rift and end up on a grind rail. The important thing to note here is that none of this is optional, it's forced. This is important because it means you can preload the grind rail section while you are playing the speedle section. In fact, every section of this sequence is both forced and small. You only move across a very small part of the world and have very little ability to even move during this section. This means the game has the whole time you're playing the section to load in the next section. So imagine the game has two memory buffers. The first buffer holds the section you're currently playing in. While you're playing, it can load the next section into the second buffer. To transition between the buffers, you can just have a very simple intermediate void location permanently in memory to hide any swap over glitches that might happen.
The
as
rift
soon as you hit
thing.
the transition, you can start loading the next section into the first buffer, as that isn't needed anymore. So, in this example, you have around 8 seconds between sections to load and decompress data, which is plenty of time to load small sections of predetermined gameplay. You could have even preloaded a lot of the creatures and animations needed before the sequence starts, so all you're loading are the backgrounds. If you wanted to be even smarter, because each section is contained to a linear, constantly moving forward gameplay, you could literally stream in which polygons and textures are needed for each frame of the gameplay. You could pre-calculate every polygon and texture needed and just stream it like streaming a movie. The only thing you can do in the gameplay is move left, right, up and down, which just changes the camera view position slightly. Everything else is completely preset. Now, to be clear, in this game they're using the SSD to do everything properly. I'm just explaining how other pretty simple techniques can be used to achieve exactly the same thing on older hardware. In fact, I designed something for LEGO Star Wars 3 where you could instantly swap back and forth between two vastly different sections of gameplay, and you can always see both sections of gameplay happening at the same time, which is even harder to achieve. Just imagine the gameplay happening in the circle is viewed through a rift and you have the same effect. And that's all running on a PS3, 2 console generations ago.
Oh damn, yeah. See, so this is what I was talking about. Like Lego games did some crazy shit because yeah, those are two different game sections running at the same time in the fucking Lego game on PlayStation 3. This is harder to achieve than what they did with the Rifts with the buffer system. Because yeah, while you're playing the pre-rendered gameplay cutscene sequence that you can't really change anything on, they could load the next one, and then the little rift part where he goes through and he's about to open another rift is another loading sequence, kind of like the Tree of Life that Kratos walks around before the door opens into the next part. So yeah, the loading screens are gone, but those are the loading screens. And he's saying y'all was capping about that PlayStation 5 SSD shit when this technique was harder to do than the Rift thing in that Lego Star Wars thing with the two gameplays playing at the same time. That's wild, bro. That's crazy. And developers don't go around just looking at other developers' work and be like, bro, why you capping like that? But for marketing's sake, Sony had to do everything they could. PlayStation had to do everything they could, and Insomniac had to do everything they could to make sure people thought this was as next gen can get. And then this developer why y'all lying to y'all fans, bro? We could have done that shit years ago. If you had the idea for it. I guess the idea for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is new, is next gen, but the concept, the way it's produced, the way it's formed, that's old tech, and that's all he's trying to convey right here. I don't think he's trying to start no ill will, but he's just trying to tell the community bro, they really lied in marketing.
Anyway, that's a quick look at the coding secrets that could allow Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart gameplay to be achieved on basically any other console from the last decade, not just the PS5. Anyway, until next time, goodbye.
Oh, that's the end. Okay, that was one of the cleanest videos you can hear. And people can make excuses about a whole lot of things like the ray tracing and the high quality textures and all that. Yeah, all the substantial, superficial things that they added around the tech. Yeah, you could argue that, oh yeah, you needed more horsepower for that. You need more horsepower for that. but that still doesn't change the fact that that rendering technique, that rift apart technique could be done on older hardware just as easily as he just said it. Like with the tech that they're using. That is wow, bro. These are the insights that you don't really get into game development until later. And then you got companies like Digital Foundry and stuff like that that live on console war shit. So they go in there, they look at all this, they tout they things, they talk about zooming in 300% and seeing a texture model and how fast the SSD is running. But then they come out the next video and be like, hey, our SSD is actually faster than the PlayStation 5's. So it's kind of how they build their fan base up. But that was just educational in the most part by a game developer. And yeah, I swear, like that 2 gameplay sequence shit that they did in Lego Star Wars, I want that in bigger games. Like Lego Star Wars did some crazy shit, like I said in the beginning, that nobody else is fucking doing. Like the split screen thing, like you play as a whole screen and then that shit just cuts in half when the other player goes a different way. Like that needs to be in more fucking games, bro. So then 2 players can play games and do different shit. But that's gonna be for another video. So thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe if you're new. Let me know what y'all think about what this developer was saying in this video. And I'll see y'all in the next one.